Greetings and welcome back to Old Ways Rising Farm, where we're going to talk today about one of the homestead truisms: stuff happens. A lot of stuff happens. Stuff happens all the time, and we've got to find a way to store that stuff. So we load it in boxes and pile them up, but the boxes fall over, so now we've got to tie some of that stuff in the rafters. But the rafters get full, so we've got to bundle some of that stuff in a load to sell it to our neighbors. But they sold us some more stuff too, so stuff still happens. Okay? So I'm being a little silly and funny, but this video is going to be about one of the really essential and less talked about homestead skills, which is knot work. Knot tying has been a crucial human skill for a very long time, and I don't think it gets enough play. It's not a cute critter, and it's not a big macho knife, so it doesn't show up in your prepper and your gardening channels as often. But it's really important because we need to bundle all of that stuff as it happens. So in this video, I'm going to show you 4 basic bundling knots. The first is called the miller's knot for bundling bags. The second is called a constrictor knot for bundling a stack of solid objects. The third is a tensioning knot for bundling a bundle. And the fourth is a really fun knot that has some niche uses, but it can do things no other knot can, and that's called a double spar knot. It comes from the sailing days, and it's for bundling rods together to keep round things from rolling and to make tripods, and it's got a lot of interesting uses for that. So I hope you'll stick around all the way to the 4th knot, and let's get started on the miller's knot. The first knot is the miller's knot. This is called the miller's knot because it's the traditional knot that mill workers would use for bundling bags of grain and flour. It's easy to tie, it holds a bag well, and it's even more importantly easy to untie without having to cut the bag open. So here I have a bag of wool from our sheep and a rope that I'm going to use to tie it. I recommend when choosing rope for these knots that you pick something which is a natural fiber, or if you're going to use a synthetic fiber, use one that is a little bit rough and has good friction. This piece of plastic twine is not the best, but it is fluorescent bubblegum pink, which will make it show up well in the camera, and that's why I'm using it for this. Not because it's the best rope. I would recommend sisal or manila or cotton, some sort of rope like that for knot tying, because they'll hold a lot better. Now, this wool has been left just out in the air for a couple weeks to dry. I put a couple drops of cedar oil on it so we don't get bugs in here. And now it's time to bundle up and stack it until it is used. So we'll draw the bag up. We will compress the contents, get the air out just as much as possible. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now, to tie the miller's knot, the first thing you want to do is grab the bag with your thumb and forefinger so that you hold it tight. Now you're going to drape the rope under your pinky, over your ring finger, and then under your other 2 fingers, okay? This loop right here is going to be important. I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit so it's easier to see. And then use your hand to grab the short end of the rope and draw the bag tight right here at the base of the pinky, okay? Now, I'm going to take the long end of the rope, go underneath my palm, I'm going to wrap all the way around and over this short end. That's important. It needs to go over the short end, and you need to make sure you don't pull this loop too tight or you'll get your finger stuck. Okay, so we're going to go over, underneath the pinky, over the tag end, wrap the rope around, okay. That's one, pull it as tight as you can. A second one, go all the way around, pull it as tight as you can. You can do 3, 2 or 3, both work, okay. Now I'm going to remove that loop from my finger and pull the long end of this rope through it, and then cinch down the loop and pull on both ends. Okay? That's the miller's knot. Now, this is a very secure, nice, tight, neat knot around that bag. To get it undone, you take the long end and you pull it, and it re-exposes the initial loop. So it's very easy to untie. You can pull that through, and it's a simple matter to unwrap it. Okay? Now, let me show you that again. I'm going to put the knot on this end this time. So I go over my ring finger and underneath the other 3 fingers. Make sure you've got a little slack. Once that's in place, get good tension on the bag. All the way around once. Pull it tight. All the way around twice. Pull it tight. Remove the finger. Through the loop. Pull both ends. And you've tied the miller's knot. Okay? Again, to untie it, here you can see it a little bit easier. That's the original loop. Just pull on the long end by itself, and you can pull the loop out and untie your bag nice and neat. Okay? As a modification, I have seen people tie this knot. You get it in place. Where at this stage, they will split my rope there. Hold on to this loop and pull it tight on a loop there. And then to untie it, you can simply pull that out, and it accomplishes the same thing. So you have choices. I like it better without leaving the loop because it's so easy to untie even when it's cinched all the way tight. But some people like to tie it and leave that loop in place. Both work. If you leave the loop, the reason I don't like it, if you're going to stack this up for some length of time, if you leave the loop, it's a little bit easier for things to catch and pull. And remember, stuff happens. There's other stuff going on around our stuff. So it's a little easier for it to come undone, which means it's also a little easier for it to come undone when you don't want it to. Okay? So now that I've demonstrated that, it's time to tie this bag up for real. So I will tie my miller's knot. In my preferred version, and I can go store my stuff. Let's move on to the constriction knot. Not all stacks of stuff are going to fit nicely in a bag. So we need a bundling knot that will allow us to get a tight bundle on a flat stack of hard objects. Now, I'm sure at some point in your life you've seen somebody take something, with this sort of geometry and try to tie it up with a granny knot. And it's a miserable nightmare to have to try and do. You got to have somebody hold their finger, and you still always lose the tension as you're finishing it off and moving forward, so you end up with a loose floppy stack. Nobody wants a loose floppy stack. So it's to your advantage to learn the constrictor knot. In order to tie the constrictor knot, we need our rope. We're going to find the middle. Okay? We're going to take the middle. We're going to put it in the middle top of our stack, and we're going to pass both ends underneath. Okay? Bring them up. Tie your simple overhand knot. Okay? And we're going to take one end and pass it under this loop in the middle. And then manipulate your ropes a little bit so that as we pull these ends tight, the tension of the rope in the middle is going to hold that knot still. Okay? This is why it's called a constrictor knot. I very much recommend that you do this with natural rope. This plastic rope always wants to fight me when I'm doing this one, but it's pink and it's easy for you to see, so we're going to keep using it here. Okay? Just have to make sure that this original loop is over top of this knot where I'm tightening it. Okay? When I let off the tension, you can see it holds it right in place. It's still unstable in that configuration, so I need to do another simple overhand knot to cinch it down. And then you can either do a second overhand knot, or we can just pretend we're tying our shoes and put a little bow in it here to deal with the loose ends. Okay? And now you can see That's a very tight bundle. Let me do it again on the other end. Take my second piece of rope, find the middle, put the middle over the middle of my stack, pass the loose ends underneath, tie the overhand knot, pass one of the long ends underneath the original loop. I got a little twisted underneath here. Let me fix that. Okay. Then position it. You see how I have this knot being tied underneath that standing end. Okay. You have to have that position or it won't work. Okay. Pull it tight. Make sure the original loop is gripping the knot that I'm tying. Tie the second overhand knot. Tie it off in a bow. Okay. And now we have a nice tight bundle that's not going to slide around and can be easily stacked and manipulated and carried wherever you need to carry it. Okay? We're having a good day here today. We've got our wool bundled up and we've got our boards bundled up, and it's time to go trade our stuff for our neighbor's stuff because stuff happens, right? So in order to do that, we need a set of knots that are good for lashing a load down to a trailer or a truck or a wagon or anything of the sort. And for a knot to be good for bundling your bundles to a conveyance vehicle, you want a knot that is secure while you're in transit, but easy to untie when you're done. And there's a lot of knots that are kind of dangerous and dicey that people want to use that tend to lodge in transit if you tie them tight enough to not come loose in transit, right? So we want to avoid that. The best way to do this is to take one end of the rope, let me get my rope organized here, okay, make a loop in it. Now we're going to use one of the knots that's often misused, but we're going to use it appropriately. Overhand knots are very bad for bending two ropes together and connecting them. You want a sheet bend for that. But when we're just making a loop, it's a perfectly legitimate knot because the stress is really only on one part of the knot and it's not going to lodge. Okay, it's plenty strong enough for this in any rope that you're likely to use. And it's not going to lodge as long as you don't have a lot of wet-dry cycles on a natural rope. If you have a lot of wet-dry cycles on a natural rope, it will shrink the material and lock that knot up solid, speaking from experience. So if it's raining, you want to make sure you unbundle this before your ropes dry out. Now, that's the first part. This we're going to use as a pulley. So we're going to take the other end of the rope, lace it through here, and now we can pull on the tag end to get the tension we want, and then just pinch it. Okay? And just with 2-finger pressure, I can have a ton of pressure on this rope, but still hold it with finger pressure. Because I'm just using the friction around that loop. And then I can come through, and I can tie a pair of overhand knots there to form up a clove hitch, and that will lock this in place with whatever degree of tension I've put into it. Then when I get to my destination, it's very easy to untie this because these half hitches won't lodge because there's almost no pressure on them. All the pressure is right here. Okay? And this will also be easy to untie by just pushing the loop through. And now we've unbundled our bundles, and we can pick up their bundles to carry those bundles home to add to our stack of stuff, because stuff happens. If you're enjoying this content and finding these knots useful, I hope that you'll go ahead and give it a thumbs up so that the YouTube algorithm knows to show it to other folks. And let's dig into the fourth knot. This knot is a little bit different from the preceding ones because this is a true nautical knot. This is called the double spar knot, and it has a very long tradition in seamanship of being used to splice braces to wooden members of the ship quickly. If you imagine being up in the rigging of a sailing ship in the middle of a storm and something breaks, you're hanging on with one arm and try to tie a knot with the other and get things braced back together temporarily, that's where this knot comes from. I'm not a sailor. If anybody out there is and wants to put something in the comments about additional information on its background, please do. I've just exhausted my knowledge on that topic. But what it's useful for is tying large beams together, large spars, okay? Now, it's really easy to tie, and we tie it in the middle of a rope. So first, you're going to take a loop, and you're going to take your right hand over your left and make a simple loop and hold it so that the top string is coming along in this direction. And then you're going to do the exact same thing again and overlap the two loops. Now you're going to take this piece here and pull it through the loop that way, and this piece and pull it up and out. Okay? So like this, and then pull it tight, and we get two loops that way. This is also sort of a fun parlor trick knot if you're into games or magician shenanigans, because if you pull it, it just pulls itself right out. Okay? There's nothing inside. So let me show you that again. Loop over, take your left hand, grab this loop, your right hand grab that loop, and you can pull them out. Now, we're not here for parlor tricks, we want useful things. So where this becomes useful is we can take these two loops that are formed, put them over the ends of two spars, and now when we pull it, we're bundling those two spars together. Okay? Now, this in and of itself is good. We have a way that we could tie a raft together like this. You could then do another one on, from here to here if you want to tie a long platform, something along those lines, or just keeping these from rolling around on a trailer. That's already useful. But if we take this and we tie in a third spar, okay, now I'm just going to do a simple overhand knot here, pull a loop out, and then do that again. Okay? Now I have two relatively secure loops. And let's stand this up and make a tripod. Here's our tripod stood up. And this is what makes the double spar knot really, really handy. Because a quick built tripod like this can be very useful for a lot of things, for managing projects. In doing the overhand knot with a double loop, we always end up with one loop which is very secure and one loop which is basically a slip knot. So to secure this extra loop, we're going to throw it up over the end of that spar and pull it tight. Okay? So now we have this that we could put up two of these and we could sling a beam from these loops. You could make a tall one and hang a deer from it. You can do whatever you want with this temporary structure. Tripods are very, very useful temporary structures. And even if all you do with this knot is use it as a camping hack, still worth knowing. Okay? So I hope that you find these bundling knots interesting. And if you're new to the channel, I would just like to mention that we are a comprehensive homesteading skills channel. We do more than just the garden and the chickens, the way a lot of channels kind of stop there. We do projects like this. We do building skills. We do, through the winter months, a lot of Sloyd-style crafting projects. And the intent is to give you the whole flavor of what it's like to be on a homestead and the skills that you need to build your own. So if you're interested in these sorts of topics, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time at Old Ways Rising Farm.